All right. So tonight we are talking about episode 713, Hello, Goodbye, written by Madeline Brestol and Evan McGahey, and directed by Jan Mathis. I'm Courtney Williams, creator and producer of Outlander Behind the Scenes. I've read all the books several times, and except for Bees, I've read twice. And show fans since the show started. And tonight I am drinking some delicious chamomile tea. It's still cold here, still, and snowing, and going down to 3 again in the next couple of days.
3 degrees.
3 degrees.
He had 80 today.
Yeah.
I know.
So we're doing this out of order. We skipped this episode initially. So I watched this. I don't even feel like I really watched it. I think I just skimmed through it the first time. So I went back to watch it on Saturday, and I was pleasantly surprised with this episode. The overall word that comes to mind for me is sweet. And I just is sweet. Yeah, it was just like a nice, sweet episode. There were some issues, but overall I enjoyed it.
Hello, I am Catherine Harmon Toomer, and I am a family physician. I've actually read all the books and can't remember hardly any of them because I've only read except Go Tell the Bees. I'm gone because I just finished it. I just started it earlier this week and I've finished it yesterday. So
congratulations.
That one, yeah. So I'm trying to decide if I want to go back and read my favorite book, which is Voyager, or if I want to repeat Go Tell the Bees again. I'm also a TV watcher. Don't even compare the two at all. Came to BTS by way of Blacklanders. Didn't write for them this time because they had more than enough people, but I will when it comes to the next section of shows. And I am drinking my echinacea and elderberry tea.
Out of your bees.
Out of my bee cup.
That's really cute.
It's so cute. And it looks as big as you are.
I know. It's a huge cup. But I'm pretty good because I drink elderberry and echinacea tea every day. And I'm pretty sure it's the reason why I had such a mild case of COVID, because it really boosts your immune system. And I haven't had a virus in 6 years.
Wow.
And got COVID and really did very well. So compared to some of the other people I've seen, I did very well. Although you can still hear it in my voice. And that's mainly because I can't take decongestants. And my overall impression was that it was polished. That's how I saw it. I thought it was a very nicely polished episode.
Okay, I look forward to hearing more about that.
I'm Carmen Schmidt. I write the Outlander Anatomy blog, and I enjoy the books and the show. Sometimes I get them mixed up, even though I've read the series 14 times, except for Bees, I've read 4 times. But other than that, the other ones I've read 14 times. I still get them mixed up. I joined with Courtney's group, and I'm glad I did. I've had a great time. I enjoy our discussions and the looking for anatomical gems, medical gems, whatever science that I can find in an episode. I focus on it. I really enjoy that. And that's one of the reasons I enjoy her books so much too. Tonight, I'm drinking chai, homemade chai. And, but I did put a little shot of coconut caramel rum, which my son made me for Christmas. Just a little bit of it in my chai, and oh my, it's really good.
And sounds delicious.
It really is good. my overall impression of this episode, I liked what you two have described of it. I thought it was good, solid entertainment. It just really seemed to flow well. The acting was good, and so I would give it 2 thumbs up.
All right. Well, let's get started with favorite scenes.
Okay. My favorite scene was, interestingly, when Buck saw Scotland, that same hill in Craig, I think they call it. And it was the same as when he was in the future for him, but present day for us. And I just thought that it just sort of one, I think it's something that Antoinette always says, that that Scotland is another character. And I felt that that was a good way of showing respect to the place where all of this is happening, but also it was just its beauty and how beauty is enduring. And that's why I just liked it. It was just, to me, it was just a symbol of, not everything has to be manufactured, not everything has to be man-made, that the truest beauty that we have is sometimes just nature. And I just like that scene for that reason.
I like that. That's cool.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay. My favorite scene was in the wedding. I mean, the wedding, I loved the wedding. And I realize it's long, it's a sequence. So I had several favorites, little scenes in there. Probably my favorite was when Ian and Rachel are giving their vows. He goes first and then she stands up and gives hers. And it's just so, Ian's face and Rachel's words, and it's so heartwarming. And then to see Jamie and Claire's reaction was so authentic. The joy and the tenderness, and just that they were touched. I felt like it was so authentic. And same with Mercy and Denzel. Just when you looked around the room, it was just really conveyed like such a warm and loving wedding. And I have to say that, when I thought about Roger and Bree's wedding, when they show Jamie on that, and they whatever they say in unison to each other, it's so scripted. And this, by comparison, and I realized that was like a very big production, and this was a little intimate, warm thing, but I just really appreciated the authenticity of the reactions around the room, and just the way that whole thing played out. I thought it was really lovely.
Well, that was mine. So I'll choose my next. I agree with you, Courtney, but I also really like what Kathy pointed out about that mountain. His words struck me to how timeless some of the things are in our lives that we take for granted. We might pass by them every day and not give it a second thought, but they really do provide anchors for us if we will allow that to happen. So I'll choose another one that I really enjoyed very much, and that was Roger and Jerry. I actually thought that was also extraordinarily tender, and it got chopped up, as they always do with these episodes, where there was bits, and then something else happened, and then there's a little bit more and a little bit more. But overall, as I look at that unfold in such a short time, it was it was hard not to appreciate the love that Roger had for a father that he really never knew, and not being able to tell him really and explain anything more. It would have caused such a stramash, if he had told his dad what their real relationship was. So the outcome was the best that they could do under the circumstances, I think. But I just thought, generally Roger, for me, is not a really very interesting character. But I thought in this instance that he really connected with this man playing Jerry. I'll come back to that a little bit later. And that, that he was really trying to show concern and tell him as much as he could, to help him in this, get him out of this situation where he would have undoubtedly been killed by those people. That, after they took all of his things, I think they probably would have hunted him down and, chopped off his hands for taking the lamb or whatever. I don't know why he took a lamb, for heaven's sakes. I could see a chicken, but a lamb seems like a pretty big meal myself, but that's what they said.
Maybe he was hungry.
Yeah, that's mine.
I'm
Okay.
remembering it correctly from the book that someone else stole it and was blaming it on him, or is that?
I think he stole a pie in a woman
Out of someone's window or something.
out of someone's window.
Oh yeah, okay.
I don't remember him stealing the
And
lamb.
I also I thought Roger should have told him. And only because if he ended up somewhere else, he would have the knowledge that his son grew up to be, a decent man.
Yeah, and that they won the war. That was
Yeah.
another thing that I
why
think
do you guys
didn't
think
feel comforted.
he didn't tell him?
Maybe
Think he thought it would blow his mind,
or that he wouldn't leave.
That's what I think. He
Oh.
wouldn't leave. That's why I said
Yeah.
I thought it was the best outcome that they could come up with. That's why
Oh.
Roger didn't say anything about it. He let him go. But he didn't want him to be stranded in that time.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, and he probably would have been thinking about Roger. He still could have been thinking about Roger, but
Yes,
not be able to
and not
leave.
gone. He just
Yeah.
stayed where he was. They could have taken him with them.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't have enough gems, did they?
Well, they didn't have enough horses.
No,
for
they
one
had
thing.
a gemstone
Oh.
for him. That's what that garnet was.
Well, I thought that it was Roger giving him his, and then basically he's going to find
No,
another
he found it from the tinker. Remember, he bought it from the tinker a couple of episodes ago.
for him. I thought it was for himself. I didn't know it was for his
Oh,
father.
well, I think he was just getting it in case he needed it, but he
Yeah, I think he
decided to
just
give
saw
to him.
it
Yeah,
in
Yeah.
his stuff and thought, oh, we might
Yeah.
need that.
Yep.
that's my thinking.
Mhm.
Don't know.
Yeah, I wonder why. I don't know that Jerry would have been like, oh, okay, I'll just stay here instead of go back to my wife and I don't know.
Well, maybe, or just would have wanted to stay longer to find out more, but I don't know. I just
Yeah.
thought it would have been nice to imagine what would have happened had he been told.
Yes.
Because I know personally, I don't know if I would have that much restraint.
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't.
I liked, believe it or not, the scene where Bree had Cameron locked up in that little
Priest hole.
yeah.
Priest closet.
And mainly because I thought her acting was really good. She seemed like a mother, like yeah. And he just had that benevolent ickiness about him. But it was just well acted and it just seemed realistic. Short of beating him half to death, I can't imagine what else she would.
She left her boot print on his head.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
So
liked that scene
was that
too. I
scene.
think
I liked it. I thought it was just a nice and it wasn't one of those over the top women, feminist move, it was like it was like Mama Bear moment and I liked it.
and she was convincing.
Oh yeah.
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 Yeah, I mean, I was thinking, what would have been like to film that with her screaming, "I'll fucking kill you" in his face? over and over again, because they do so many takes, because she was very convincing
Yeah.
in that. I thought Sophie did a great job in this episode.
Yeah.
Okay. So there were other little scenes in the wedding that I liked, but I'll go to my next one. I'll steal Carmen's next one, which was the wedding night. Is that your next one, Carmen?
No, actually, but that's one coming up for me for under another
Okay.
category.
Okay. I loved that because it was straight from the book, and I just thought it was so well done. I liked how the pace of it, how it was really slow but not too slow, and it just was very believable. It wasn't smarmy. They didn't try to be Jamie and Claire. They just found their own way, and particularly I don't know, it just seems so authentic. And even when they, she said, I've heard that it hurts. I want to get that part over with. That was the other thing that struck me. They were connected throughout the entire scene. And I don't think we always see that even with Jamie and Claire. Oh, I'm certainly not other couples, but and he's watching her face to be like, am I hurting you? And she's saying, yes, go ahead. I don't know. There was just something very sweet about that scene. Yeah.
They're very comfortable with one another. I agree with you. The other thing that in that scene that usually in any other scene with that's not Jamie and Claire usually comes off as very cringy. That one didn't at all.
Not at all. I
Not
agree.
at all.
Yeah, no cringe. I actually wrote that. No, not
No cringe.
not cringy.
Yeah.
Because it's true.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find Fergus and Marsley cringy.
But did they ever show them?
They didn't show their
They had a
wedding.
little sexual
Tension stuff. But
during
that
her
was,
labor.
yeah.
There was some
Yes, during her
sexuality.
labor.
And it
Yeah,
wasn't
now
cringy.
that yeah. And part of that's because Fergus is just so damn cute. But
they're
It's a
just
good
really good
scene.
actors, and
I
they're
forgot
really
the name of the
comfortable with each
actor.
other.
Oh
But
gosh,
yeah.
I forgot his exact name, but
I mean, but listen, this is a Quaker and a Mohawk who's Scottish, and they're having their first, her first time. There were so much potential ingredients for cringe, and it just wasn't.
Yeah.
Which is that's
Actually,
amazing.
I thought I would like to add that I just thought everything that she said and all the way that she acted was so, I'll use your word, Courtney, authentic. I am not a Quaker and I don't have any personal Quaker friends. But from what I've read and what I understand about their philosophy, I just think that it embodies it, and I just believe her. I believe that she's a Quaker when I watch her, and she is just so wonderful with Ian. Everything that she says and does with him is just like it's an affirmation of who he is, and he's had such a hard time. She's basically relieving him of a lot of that pain that he carries around because she is so accepting and loving of him.
Yeah, I love their relationship.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, I love their relationship in the book. Books for that reason is they're such a unique pair, but they work so well. And I really think that it's translating to the screen very, very well.
Yeah. And I think part of it is because William wasn't in there, so you couldn't see the comparison. What? I just felt the chemistry between her and William was so much more than her.
I just got an image of William being there, and it was just funny because.
However, one of the things I liked about that scene also is that they didn't equate virginity with innocence or lack of confidence. I like the fact that so what but she was very confident in terms of she knew exactly what she wanted. She knew, and that's realistic. I mean, I think sometimes in film and TV, they overplay it's almost like they infantilize, if that's the word,
Yeah.
um, women in that situation. And I like the
Yeah.
fact that they didn't.
Yeah.
No, she was self-possessed, I would say. She had a lot of self-possession in it. She knew who she was, and she wasn't this, tell me what to do, I don't know, sort of
Mhm.
thing. And I agree that is often the portrayal that women are put in and still put in.
Mhm.
Well, that's what's so great about that character is the way Diana wrote her. She's a Quaker, which you could think would be meek and whatever, but she is not meek at all. She is a really
To be
strong.
honest, I've met many Quakers, and we actually have a lot of Mennonites, which are very similar to Quakers around here. And they are not, I mean, the women are not, they're not meek and mild at all. I mean, they are entrepreneurs. They are, they're tough actually. Um, they are actually, I think the attitude is that they're very pragmatic. And so I think that takes away some of the, you know, um, and they study all the world, not just, it's not like, oh, it's just the Bible and what, but it's like all human nature is up um for inspection and up for dissection, as I always say. Um, and so they're really very worldly.
Let's see, I that's just an assumption.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know anything about Quakers, but
They were my patients. So I
okay.
was, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they're very, very fun. It's like I never had to try and pull things out of them. If they're having any type of difficulty, it's like they're very, like I said, it was just straightforward. It's like, this is my body, this is what's happening. And no matter what it was, there was no embarrassment, there was no nothing. It's just um I just felt they were like really cool people. They're like,
Wow.
and it
That
made
must,
sense that Quakers were always the ones who were abolitionists. They were like the most staunch abolitionists.
yes, they were.
They're fighters.
Yeah.
Even though they may not fight physically, they are definitely people who are not afraid to get into a confrontation on who they think is on the right side of history. And
That's what
so,
I just find so cool about the inclusion of these characters, and even in their wedding ceremony, the way Denzel is, saying that he regrets that he didn't take care of her and that he brought her, and then she's like, wait a minute, stands up, I thought you were right, or I wouldn't have gone. I'm not naked, I'm not starving. Just yeah, there's something very appealing about.
yeah.
Mhm.
And to be honest, her character, as someone who's like the younger sister of a brother, the more
Yeah.
protective the older brother, the more bold the younger sister, because you're just like, nothing's gonna happen to me. My brother's gonna take care of it. And so you feel protected, and so you push the envelope a whole lot more than when you're scared. You don't. But when you just feel like no matter what I do, someone has my back, you just kind of
Is
switch.
that what that is? I've never. My brother would be going,
I think fathers can
thank you,
transmit
Catherine.
that to their daughters too. I
Pardon?
think I think fathers also can transmit
Mhm.
that to their
Oh yeah,
daughters. Older
absolutely.
brothers and fathers can make a real difference in how
Mhm.
confident that the women that they are in their family are because of how they treat them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I have one more, and that is that I thought the exchange between Ian and Jamie about wedding night was really very entertaining. And it was pretty much out of the book. Uh, I really liked that where Jamie said, he said, "Well, I was a virgin," because Ian's asking about it, and he said, "Well, I was a virgin, and Claire wasn't, and she told me what to do, but Dougal, Rupert, and Angus had told me what to do beforehand." And he said, "Did they give you any good advice?" And he said, "God,
Oh,
no."
God, no. That was my favorite thing.
Claire gave him much better advice, is what he was meaning by that. But I thought they carried it off really well, the two of them together. When you read it in the book, it's of course Diana's hand, and so it's always wonderful. But it's nice when the actors bring that to life for us and give it to us in a tangible, visible way in which they did. And I just thought, yeah, I could see those guys. That's the way they would have said. That's the way they would have interacted on this about this topic. That's not an easy topic for a couple of guys to discuss, I don't think. But I don't know, because I'm not a guy and I haven't sat in on such a discussion. But it might be a little bit hard, especially in that era. But I
Well, I
thought
think
they
Ian
were
and
very
Jamie's
convincing.
relationship was such that they took to talk about anything.
Yeah,
But
good
it's
point.
interesting because I had that as one of my favorite scenes also, but partly because it had my favorite line. So, but if you remember when he was explaining to Claire on their wedding night what happened, and he used that same line. I got a lot of advice from Dougal, and so I thought it was really interesting because he said it almost in the same cadence, the same tone of voice, and he said the names in the same order.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mhm.
There were a lot
It
of
was like a little bit of deja vu almost
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
scene.
there were a lot of callbacks in this episode.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, well, let's go on to what worked for you.
What worked for me was the pace. I really liked the pace of the episode, and I liked how the pace, but also in how they, went back and forth between present day and in the past. Often I found it annoying in other episodes. This one I did not. I just thought it was well done. They cut at the right time, and they went back when they were going from scene to scene. It seemed like they um they ended one at the right spot and they picked up the other at the right spot, regardless of what time it was in. And I just thought that was well done.
What worked for me was all of the beautiful nature scenes in this episode. Like the opening scene of the 1739, I don't know if you guys noticed that it was like they were in a bowl almost. The hillside, I don't know if it's a mountain, but it's so steep, and then it comes down and then it goes up. I don't know if was the camera work or if it's actually just
It's their
that's
glacier formed, a lot of them. I think it's probably scooped by glaciers.
gorgeous. Yeah, so the Scotland being another character, but I particularly felt like this director captured and utilized so much of the nature in the transitions, in the just and I think that maybe lent itself to the pace because it's very relaxing to see all of that perspective of nature involved, even if it wasn't a wide shot. It's just there and it's kind of calming. I don't know, for me. I also appreciated all the audio inclusions. I'm a very auditory person, and so there was like clip clopping of the horses when they were at Mercy's. The fire was crackling. Church bells were going on outside. The clock was ticking. Rollo was making little sounds, and you could hear Jamie's fingers tapping. There was just a lot of auditory streams running. I don't remember if I heard breeze, but anyway, I love, to me, that adds so much dimension to the episode.
Well, I enjoyed Jim's performance in the Iraqi Dam tunnels. I thought he did a really good job for such a young little boy. And, I thought he acted extremely well. There was nothing strained about it or artificial about it or whatnot. He just seemed like a kid who was scared. But he also was very inquisitive, which is correct for his character. I thought he was portraying the character of Jim from the books quite well. And he, when he found the time portal and all of his excursion, he found the hard hat, which I thought was a brilliant way of giving him some light. Um, you know, that wasn't in the book, but it worked very well for this particular episode. And I also like the fact that as he's speaking to himself and he's going down this tunnel, he comes to the fork and he recalls his mother's words from Singapore, that episode 705, where she talks about when she was in the tunnel and he heard her. And she said, so I knew which way to go because she had seen the blueprint. So he followed her directions. And he explains that as he's working his way through the, you know, that he's going to do what his mother did. And it will take him into the right way and get him out, although we don't see that part in the episode. So I liked his performance there. I liked the different techniques that they used to try to show how he escaped or was managing the his fear and his intellectual drive, you know, to recall what his mother had done and then copy her. And I thought it was well done.
The only
I
part
like that too.
I thought was interesting, and I even when Bree was caught in the tunnels, how did they get through that
Portal.
the portal without a gem and without disintegrating? I mean, I just, it was like, is it because it was thin? Is it because it wasn't tied to something physical, like a rock or something? I don't know. I just thought it was interesting because I wanted to see how he got through it. I think they showed, did they show Bree run through it, push through it? I can't remember, but
it seems like she did.
Just
but
wondered, it's like, you know, what would have, or maybe it was because he heard his father calling him, and so
yeah. And then, you know, it made me wonder because Mandy was in the car at the time, Mandy and Bree, and she said he's gone. Because that was at the point where he thought he heard Roger calling him. And then she says, he's gone. And then the next thing he's out on the road. So that's not explained, but you know, we could probably come up with a scenario to explain it if we wanted to.
I thought that was for a little added drama because she says he's gone, and that's right when we see the boy in 1739. So you think, oh, he went to Roger. I didn't think that because I read the books, but somebody might think that. But I think in the book they made it seem like it was like, super thin, so you could almost be on through it before it could grab you, kind of thing.
Yeah, when she's riding the train, remember she goes through it in the book, and she goes through it very fast, but she feels the effect of it. And you know, we don't know why it didn't take her to another time.
Yeah, but Carmen, I had that too. I particularly love. I just thought he played also was Jem, but also just a little boy. Like exactly, particularly his face when he turns on the switch, and his face goes. It's like, you know, because little boys, they would just forget what they're doing and be like, cool, you know, like they can get so absorbed in what they're doing. Yeah, exactly. And his face was perfect. I got a kick out of that whole scene. I thought he did a good job. Yeah. I loved Rolo yawning during the wedding when it's like going on and he's like,
that also was very true to
a dog. Yeah. I thought that was hilarious. I don't know if you guys noticed, but when Claire and Jamie have that cute, you know, when she's like, well, how do they know in the spirit? And he's like, and what if it doesn't ever? And he's like, well, then we'll be here in a very long time. And then he sits back, and then Denny's like, Jamie. And Jamie's face looks like a little kid who's caught in church, who's like, You're not supposed to be talking. He goes like, I thought that was great. I
Yeah.
loved that little moment. Yeah.
I'll add one thing that I meant to say before. When Jim is at the portal, he hears Roger's voice, his dad's voice, calling him. And that was reminiscent to me of Frank calling Claire in episode 108 at the Stones, you know, and she thought she could hear him calling. And I think that was an interesting sort of callback that you were talking about to an earlier episode, another callback to an earlier episode. I thought that Lord John being found by the Continentals was fun. he's having good time with this part of his character, I think. And the fact that he used his name Bertram Armstrong, which are two of his middle names, they really are two of his middle names, but he's used that, you know, and that's not untrue, that those are his names. But in the book, he goes by Bert Armstrong, and you remember
right.
Jim is not Jim, but Germain is helping him make his way with Continentals in the book, and so there's much more to that story than what we get in the episode. But I thought it was very funny, you know, and he said, oh, well, I mean, he was lying it through his teeth right on the spot, you know, but he convinced them, and they, you know, they can take care of you and help you then. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah. Catherine, what was yours?
It was the humor. I wrote it on my, I ran out of space on my one page, and I kind of had an arrow, and I was like, where's that going? Oh, here. Humor. The humor, I felt there's a lot of humor in this episode, and it wasn't inappropriate, and it wasn't, you know, it fit the situation, which is generally what we do. Is like, no matter how tense something is, we still find some humor in what's going on.
Hopefully.
Yeah, but I just thought I thought it was, and it was funny. I mean, I laughed more than once in this episode. So
Yeah, and that's not, I mean, Diana uses a lot of humor in the books, and the episodes are often missing that. And I really liked seeing that between Jamie and Claire, especially, but yeah. I'm gonna say that I really appreciated the difference between how they showed the difference between Buck and Roger, and how they communicated with a small boy, because Buck's from 1739, or I mean, what year is he from? I don't know. He's from 1740 whatever.
No.
Buck is Buck.
Here he probably died.
You mean when he met Roger?
Well,
That
what
would
year
have been
was Buck born?
1760 something, wouldn't it been?
Was Buck born in 1739? No, obviously, but not long after. But anyway, Buck is more from that time period. So they had him pick that kid up and say, you know, he you know, Roger's trying to bargain with him, and Buck picks him up and says, you know, how about you tell us, and if you do, I don't break your neck. And like, we would never talk to children like that today, but that's more authentic. You know, I'm really glad they didn't have him do some, you know, kneel down on one knee and talk to him. It was great to see, like, Buck would do that, and then Roger is more, you know, updated.
My dad would do that. It hasn't been that long ago since children were
Yeah.
they weren't talked to and reasoned with. They were told what to do.
Yeah, he says, tell us what you know, and I'll not break your neck, you wee gomerel. I liked how in the morning after scene with Rachel and Ian, the camera, how it pans up and their legs are all tangled together in their sleep. I thought that was realistic and cute, and yeah, and the beautiful snowy horse riding scene, that's just another way the nature worked for me, that they used the nature in this episode quite a bit. So I'll stop there.
I thought the opening scene of Buck and Roger figuring out where the time portal might be and where they should go look for Jerry was convincing. I thought it made sense. I thought they reasoned their way through it. You know, Roger saying, well, look, if this isn't this river, but if it's this, then the Rocky Dam is going to be down there. So we should look down there. And that's when they find the stones. So I thought that was, you know, brought the audience in on how they are going to come across this man, because I mean, that's a big country and they could be looking all over for him. But it made sense that they're going to, you know, that they reasoned their way through it and showed the audience how they came to that, to arrived at the decision that they were going to go in the direction that they did and came across the stones.
Is that in the book that way?
No,
Oh,
that scene is not in the book.
how did they figure it out in the book?
They came across it when they're running from the farmer after they get, they release Jerry from, he's being held in a barn or shed.
Right.
And so they release him and they're being chased by the farmer and his dog. And they have, as they're moving up through the fields, they come upon these stones. And so that's when he sends him back through the stones.
That
What
was
I
very
they never
clever then.
explained- Yeah, what they never explained is how, if he had his tags and it was his initials, how Roger knew his name.
Yeah. He kind of let that go.
I'm sorry, I'm not following.
So Roger called out Jeremiah, called his father.
Mm-hmm.
Tags he had were just his initials, JW. So how did he know that his name was Jeremiah?
Yeah, he doesn't
Roger?
explain that.
Yeah.
He didn't.
Not Roger.
He didn't,
I mean, we know how he knows because it's his father. But but the actual Jeremiah who was there, how would he have known his name?
he's saying, because he says, Jerry, don't go, Jerry. And he's like, how do you know my name? And that question never gets answered.
Oh, yeah. Yep. That's true. Yeah, well, you know, I think Jerry is in a state of shock. He's probably got PTSD. Yeah. So yeah. He may not be thinking really too awfully well. And he may not be tracking well enough to ask logical questions. He certainly is confused about, he's really confused about things though, you know, and he feels rushed. You know, he's like, how do you know my wife's name, you know, and that sort of thing. So there was some questioning that he did, but you're right. He didn't say, how do you know those are my tags, for instance?
Yeah. I guess he could be like, we reasoned it out because I know what these are, but still, how do you know his name is Jerry? There's no Jerry anywhere that we know of, printed on anything. So, okay, let's go on.
I mean, how does Roger know that his name, that he was called Jerry?
Yeah. In Jerry's mind, how does Roger know that? That's the question, right, Catherine? Yeah. Okay, let's go to least favorite scenes. Catherine?
That I found the wedding. Or
you found what?
The wedding really boring. I actually wrote here wedding boring AF.
I liked it.
Oh, that's so funny.
There were parts in there that I kind of liked, like the little whispers between Jamie and Claire. But for the most part, I watched it twice, and both times I was really tempted to fast forward through it. But I didn't. But yeah, I found it.
Okay. That's so funny because when I went back to prepare, I spent the longest time on the wedding. I just looked at it and rewound and savored, and that's so funny. Well, as these things go, my least favorite was the sequence with Jerry Mackenzie, because I will I will tell you that I kind of had to dig because I didn't really have a least favorite in this episode, but if forced to come up with one, I guess it was the beginning where they, where they just meet him and then he falls. That was a little bit cliche, when they're running and Jerry falls and hurts his leg. I just I thought the part by the Stones was really well done by Roger and it was touching and all that stuff. But the precursor to it, it's just I don't care that much about Jerry. I have a hard time when they bring in these characters that I don't care about. So anyway, that would be my least favorite.
I had a similar reaction. I didn't really have a least favorite in this particular episode. I thought they were all, I had some that I preferred and that I named as my favorites, but honestly, they were pretty much on an even keel for me. I felt like they were all pretty well done. I guess one of the things that I could have done without is so much time in the car with hot, cold, that sort of thing.
With your favorite actress.
Yeah.
Two of them.
No, I have to agree with you. I thought Bree did a good job in this particular episode.
Yeah.
And as you guys are talking, I'm sitting here thinking, why didn't I like the wedding so much? And I think part of it is because I could predict what was going to be said next. And it's like it was just very predictable. And maybe that's why I didn't particularly, because it didn't seem like something I wasn't glued to it thinking, what's going to happen? I knew what was going to happen. You knew exactly what Denzel was going to say. You knew exactly, it's like, of course he was going to, it starts you down a road and you're like, oh no. And then he turns it at the end. I mean, yeah. The police scene I found that so frustrating. I mean, I don't like scenes where you just want to smack the person that's in it. And that's kind of how I felt. You just want to smack. I find those type of scenes very frustrating. And it annoyed me.
And that was another callback to the
108.
108 Frank did. And I was like, what's with these Scottish police? They're always thinking that people are having affairs.
Yeah, they always blame the victim. What is that about?
Yeah,
that was an echo again of the 108, where the police chief thought, that Claire had run off with a lover.
Yeah, and again, that was adapted. That was clever by the writers, I think. Yeah. Both the Jemmy the way they were going to the dam at the same time Jemmy was going through the dam, and then they ended up with that Claire, Frank, Jem scene, and then this police scene. I know that wasn't in the book because the Frank bit wasn't in the book from 108. That was an adaptation, right? They didn't. Well, I guess they did kind of insinuate that maybe, but it really was kind of just a.
Boy, it's been a while since I've read it, but I thought that Frank beat somebody up.
That's in the show, not in the book.
It's not in the book. I thought he beat somebody up.
No, I thought in the book
Frank's not a beater upper.
Woman at the bar, and then
No, that's the show.
Yeah, that's the show.
That's the show. Remember we were all like, what? Come on, Frank is. It was like Ron was trying to be like, well, Frank's a tough guy too. Look what that was not his. He's
an intellectual.
Intellectual, usually those don't go together anyway. No. So I think that was some creative. As we're talking about this, I'm like, wow, these writers did a good job.
Yeah.
Okay, so what didn't work for you, Catherine?
I had to really dig. I mean, there was a lot there was nothing. It pretty much all worked.
Yeah.
But I still feel like Mrs. Woodcock and her British accent seems too modern to me. I was just like,
Yeah.
I mean, yes, there are people who probably would, um, you know, when once they realize what the proper way of speaking, or there's, I'm sure you can teach yourself how to speak. And so I'm sure there were people walking around with British accent, um, former slaves or not slaves or whoever. But for some reason, hers just, um, I don't know.
Doesn't feel
It just every time
realistic.
she spoke, I was just like, it just took me out of the scene. And I know it. I mean, my father did it. I mean, I know that it's possible to just decide you're going to speak a certain way and practice and just speak that way. Um, you
What'd
know,
your dad do it with, out of
well, he
curiosity?
grew up he grew up poor in Detroit. I mean,
Mhm.
he had a very distinctive street accent, and then he decided that that wasn't the proper way of speaking, and so he just trained himself to speak kind of like with a generic Midwestern accent. So he sounded nothing like his brothers and sisters.
Yeah. Well, did his brothers and sisters, your dad was super educated too, right?
But he's the only one who was.
Yeah, so I mean, I bet that had a big
Well, partly
influence
the
too.
reason he did it was because he was going that direction. And
Yeah.
he said he remembers that, he planned out his whole life when he was 14. So, and so that was one of the things you're gonna have to learn how to speak properly.
Mm.
And so,
Good for him.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's possible, but then who would she even have been emulating with her London accent? Nobody else sounds like that.
Like I said, it seemed like too modern of an accent. Even if it
Yeah.
was British, there's still um
I didn't think it was her accent. I understand what you're saying, but for me, it wasn't her accent as much as it was what they gave her to say.
maybe that's what it was.
That was too modern.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a very, I mean, it maybe it was hard for them to conceptualize liberated and not modern.
Yeah.
Like, what would that even look like? You know?
True.
Mm.
I don't know. Okay.
Do you suppose she's Scottish? If she's Scottish, maybe she's speaking, uh, trying to speak with an American, whatever that is, accent.
Yeah.
There's a lot on social media that it's very hard to do an American accent.
Mm-hmm.
I would think so, because there are a lot of bad ones.
Yeah, there were a lot of battles. Yeah. In this episode.
That's the truth.
Yeah. Most of them are bad ones. There are a few who are good, but you couldn't tell.
Theo James does a good American accent.
Yeah. But
okay, so what didn't work for me is did you guys notice Buck and Roger's boots? I mean, they would have
yeah,
close-ups of their boots and they were like perfectly black.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when they start, I mean, they're camping there and they've already been wandering around and they're perfectly clean and their hair's all that. But even just close-ups of their boots as they're trudging through, across rivers, and then they go on that whole thing on foot, and they show their boots when they're chasing that kid, totally shined up and clean. And I don't know, that I'm trying to ignore all that, but I noticed that and
I mean, in earlier seasons that never would have happened.
no, well, Terry was very she wanted it to be very authentic, and I think this costume designer does beautiful costumes, but she just doesn't think about that.
No.
So
It's like she's not in the story. She's just like she's playing dress up with the characters. But she's not.
Yes, it's like she's doing a play.
Yeah, like
not,
she's not trying to make them do it,
Yeah. Right. It's like a play. Carmen, did you have any? That was the only thing.
Well,
I mean,
I will piggyback on the back of that because the Continentals that pick up Lord John, their uniform is absolutely pristine. There's no, they look like, you know, I mean, they, no mud, nothing, you know, everything is just perfect on them. Beautiful color. I don't know. That didn't work for me. I will say that, but there's another one that I really didn't care for very much, and that was Jamie being wakeful in Claire's room, that he can't go to sleep because this is where she and John had their tryst, quotes. Why don't they go sleep someplace else and find a different home? They don't have to stay in Lord John's home, do they?
or a different room.
Or
It
a
can't be
different
one
room, or sleep on the floor. You know, actually, they did it on the floor. So, you know, I don't know that that didn't work for me very well. I don't think, because I just, it's impractical for me. I understand they're trying to portray that he's a jealous man. We know that he says he is in the book, so we know that that's true for him. But he's just making too big of a deal for me about this bedroom. And I think that he could go down on the dining room table. They could go down there and sleep. They've done other things on that table. So,
Yeah.
no.
That's definitely his table now.
Yeah. One other one that I think is real interesting is that Roger at the end, after his dad goes through the stones, he tells Buck that he was thinking about his father just before he went through the stones. And maybe Jim isn't here after all. And I'm like, it took you an awful long time to figure this out, Roger. That's you've been, I mean, why did you know how it works, you know, that you're supposed to think of somebody.
Well,
So
maybe he didn't really realize, you know what I mean? Maybe it was a fleeting thought, that he thought of his dad, but I thought it was weird that then he then said, but sometimes I think the stones send you where they want you to, but it's like, no, you came here because you thought of your dad. Why are you saying the stones sent you where they wanted? Like, that's the way it works.
Yeah.
So that's why you came here.
yeah, I mean, they're a guide.
Maybe he was trying to, maybe Buck was trying to figure out why he was there. I guess, how did they both end up in the same place then?
They went together.
Well, they went together, but if you're going through the stones and it's how is one person's thought more?
Oh,
No, they're
good
supposed to
point.
both
Because
think
he
the
wasn't
same
thinking
thing.
of
He was
Roger's
supposed to be
dad.
thinking of, they were both supposed to be thinking of Jim.
Yeah.
Right.
And
but-
Roger explained that he thought of his dad just before going through, but how did Buck get there then?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe Buck was thinking of
But at the
Roger.
same time, we are talking about people traveling through stones. So
But wait a minute. Maybe Buck was thinking about Roger. And so he like piggybacked on Roger.
Maybe.
I don't know. Anyway. Okay, let's do things I noticed.
Things
Catherine?
I have walls today. I finally get to talk about my walls.
Yay.
Two different rooms. When Ian and Jamie are talking before the wedding, that there was like the paneling, which is still very common actually in the South. But even though that's not where they were, but it's just the paneling, and it was like this interesting blue, gray, white. It was just a pretty color. And then they had candles, you know, sconces on the walls. And I did notice that. And then the other was when Jamie and Claire were talking, and that room, it was just this monochromatic, deep, rich. It almost looked like velvet that wasn't velvet. That was what I noticed. I was
The
like,
wall or are you
no,
talking about like
the
their
color,
bed?
because it was like the bedspread, the walls, the window treatments were all the same color. It was just,
Mhm.
but it was a pretty green.
Yeah.
And I just noticed, like, finally this season, it was like, what happened to the sets? I mean, one of the reasons I used to watch it, I mean, it was because I was looking, to see what color they were going to paint the walls. And so
No
finally,
John Gary Steele.
yeah, but this episode, there was some unique colors, at least.
Good. Yeah. I didn't notice that, but I mean, I noticed the bedspread. It was
Yeah,
beautiful.
I did that too, but I didn't notice the walls. I'm sorry. I'm glad you're here to bring it, to help us
Yeah.
to appreciate some other things.
I think Kathy, you brought this up. I did notice the straight white teeth in this episode. Ian and Denzel in particular had like really beautiful straight white teeth, and I noticed that. And I also want to know, who are those other people at the wedding?
Well, one was Henry.
Bertrams were were
Yeah,
one because he said they would be there.
they were coming. And then
So
you had
who are the
Mrs. Woodcock.
Bertrams? Isn't that weird that they have the same name as
They
Lord
have the
John?
garden. They're the garden people. Bertram's
Oh,
garden. And they were mentioned
Thank
again
you.
in another somewhere else too, that the Bertrams were. Maybe it was when Lord John had that thing at his house. I don't remember where it was, but that's who they are. They're the garden people, where she goes and gets her herbs.
Isn't that his name, Bertram Armstrong?
It's not spelled the same.
Okay, but it's weird. You know how Diana does that? She uses the same names. But there were two men and a woman, so I think Bertrams were the couple, but there was some other rando.
Wasn't that Henry? Wasn't that the Lord John's nephew?
He was there, but there was
Henry.
one other man, so maybe he is a Bertram relative. But as I was watching the wedding, I was like, who are these? He did say the Bertrams will be there, but I don't
I
think
don't
I've
think
ever
it's
seen
spelled the
those.
same as Lord John's name, but I have to go back and look.
I don't think I've ever seen them before. We'll come back
Yeah, I
around.
was curious about what Buck and Roger did with their horses when they
Me
were
too.
they were on them, and they were with them when they camped, and then suddenly there's no horses. In that area, I wouldn't go off and leave my horse because those people steal. They take
Yeah,
stuff that
they
come
steal
across.
everything. I don't think they would have gotten them back. And
Yeah.
the little trail they were on, horses could have walked on that. I mean, I don't know why the choice to leave the horses behind. I guess
Yeah.
because then they would have to deal with them with Jerry and all that. So
Yeah, I mean, I pragmatically in the filming, I can see why they didn't do it,
yeah,
but
yeah, no, I think those horses would have been gone.
yeah, I do too.
They probably would have hobbled them, maybe.
The title card is a World War II Spitfire, which is what Jerry was supposedly flying when he disappeared. And I thought, I'm not sure if Roger's plane is that, the little toy one. I meant to go back and look at its features to see, and I forgot to do that. But it could be that his little toy plane also from Roger as a little boy was also a World War II Spitfire.
Yeah, I don't know what that was, but I bet it is. I don't know where that plane came from, but they show it a lot.
Well, isn't it a British? I think it was their answer to the Nazis, Germany's planes.
Okay.
I think it
So
was
it's
supposed to be pretty
significant.
maneuverable.
Okay. Maybe
I
it
don't
was
know
some
much about.
foreshadowing for Jerry. I noticed Antoinette would have been proud. Jamie moved his coattails before he sat back down. after he got up and spoke his heart at the wedding. Did you guys notice that there were some continuity issues with the clock at the wedding? Did you guys notice that?
No.
So it was 12 o'clock when Denzel brought Rachel in and they all started their sitting. And then it was 12:17 when everyone started fidgeting. And then the wedding happened and it was 12:15 when the wedding ended.
That's true. That is a continuity issue. Talk about time travel.
I noticed that Rachel has beautiful hair.
That's a nice figure.
Yeah, she's a beautiful girl.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that Lord John Grey did have dirty hands when he crawled out from under the tree.
Yes.
But in the next episode, when he takes the oath, he's got clean hands and fingernails. So honestly, I think a lot of their continuity comes from when it's a new day of filming. That's what I've seen.
Claire's reaction when Jamie comes in with his general uniform on, I thought was out of character. In the book, she cries when he comes in with his uniform because she doesn't want him to go back to war. She doesn't want to go back to war. And, but here, she's like, oh, I'm proud of you. You look great, that sort of thing. And I thought that's a little out of character for Claire, book Claire, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, they show Claire into a patriot.
Yeah.
And she would always put Jamie before that, I think.
Yeah, Jamie didn't wear his kilt to the wedding, and he does in the book. I would have loved to have seen him in his kilt.
Yeah.
They didn't put him in it.
Yeah, maybe hard to come up with why he's had a kilt with him. I don't know, across all that stuff. On the ship and the sinking ship. And then
no, his ship didn't sink. Remember, he wasn't.
No, it didn't, but
his things were on the other ship.
I guess, yeah.
Oh, that's
Weren't
right. Okay.
Yes, he said his luggage was on the other ship. I noticed Buck is holding his heart when they are near the stones.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry has beautiful blue eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the scene where Jamie comes in his uniform harked back to the season 5 when he comes in his kilt and Claire sees him. There was a parallel there for me.
Yeah.
Said Buck is very much like Roger's therapist. My God, like, and I mean, he's like the most understanding, supportive. I don't know if that's very realistic for a dude from his time period, but he'd probably be like, you talk too much or whatever, stuff like that. But Antoinette was like, I don't really get Buck and what his purpose is. And it's pretty clear to me his purpose in the show is to be someone for Roger to talk to as he goes through all the things he's going through. Otherwise, there'd be so much mental, like voice. It would just be hard, I think, to capture everything. And the last thing I'll say is I noticed that Claire and Mercy's folded hands while they're getting Rachel ready. It's a lot of like little hand, they stand like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Is that like time? Is that period correct or?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of portraits that I've seen from that time have women with their hands crossed like that.
All right, so now we're ready for medical and anatomical.
The medical stuff, the head injury. Okay, so Bree hit Rob Cameron in the head hard enough to knock him unconscious. And he seemed awfully lucid when he was tied up in the room
Yeah.
for somebody who had just been unconscious from a head injury. So that is what I noticed. Um,
That pop would have given him a subdural. He would
yeah, I mean, I was and the other was the conversation between Denzel and Henry when he was like, should you be carrying that? Which was, yeah, I mean, generally realistic. When people have had any type of abdominal surgery, they shouldn't lift anything more than a certain amount of weight. But also physical therapy was kind of introduced into, by Claire telling him that he needs to work his muscles to get stronger.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I'm sure they didn't have physical therapy back then, but she kind of introduced that. Those were the only
When
things I noticed. Other
was
than
there physical therapy around in when she came over in the 60s?
there,
Yes, she would have
yeah,
had.
she would have
Yes,
been, and not even if they didn't call it that, they still had procedures that they, to strengthen patients after surgery.
Okay.
Okay,
Well,
I have a couple, and one is that as Ian is making love to Rachel, there's no scar on his left arm where Archbug
whoops.
whacked him with an axe. In the book, it almost cuts his muscle in two. It's so deep, but he has no scar at all, and it's close enough to that's a continuity issue. I think that they should have had at least a pink, some remnant of it. I mean, it was bad enough that, remember, it was in a sling, wrapped
Yeah.
in the sling. So we never saw it, but I presume that it was bad enough to warrant that kind of treatment, that it would have not been totally healed and gone by the time we see him. The other thing that I thought to myself is that as Rachel and Denzel get up, and talk about, I took you to war, but I'm fine, I wanted to go, and so forth, and Denzel declaring to Ian that she's now found her home. That to me was like a psychological group session. It was really, I can see how healing that would be. I have no idea how true to life it is, but you can imagine that if people are acknowledging their what they've done to someone else, and the other person has an opportunity to receive that in the spirit that it was given, I can see how that would be very healing in a group of people, in a society, a small society, where you're able to do that. So I thought to myself, man, that's good psychological principles that they're applying there, by confession and openness and responsibility, taking responsibility for one's actions. So I thought that was a really fun one. That's not quite anatomical, but it's kind of medical. So I thought I would stick that in there. That's about, I mean, we had to really scrape to find something in this one, because there wasn't much, but
Yeah. I just had Henry's recovery, which Kathy, you covered. Jerry's leg, I don't know, that's like not even worth. And
we all have had it. I'm sure we've twisted our ankle. So.
Yeah.
And then Buck's heart.
Yeah, holding his heart.
Yeah, he's grabbing his chest.
His left chest.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And what, in your experience, when people go through the stones, do they all?
However, the fact that his heart was affected when he came through the stones the first time, being near them again would have
Yeah.
brought some of the symptoms back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was good continuity. So, lawyerly, the Quaker wedding is interesting. There's Mercy and Henry again. There's Mr. whatever his name was, Lamb. And then this classified Spitfire with a camera. Those are all the things that I could identify that were kind of
Mhm.
lawyerly. I don't know really if we know
Well, and then the other was not so much about lawyerly, but legal. What
Yeah.
if Lord John Grey being found, and the story he
Yeah.
needed to come up with in order not to get hanged.
Let's go on to BTS. Yeah, go ahead. You do
So
all of
when I
them.
looked at the blue eyes on Jerry, I thought, man, he really looks familiar. And then that brief scene in the underground when he sees Roger as a little boy, he is the veterinarian in the Scottish veterinarian in All Creatures Great and Small, which is on PBS. And his name is Nicholas Rafe. And he's quite a good actor, I think. So I was really pleased to see him in this part.
I'm actually surprised we don't see that more, because British, they tend to recycle their actors a lot.
Yes, they do.
And
I
so, but I
think
have noticed that other than Shetland, the guy who played, well, I mean, like there's a few shows that are, former Outlander actors, but you don't see them like some of the other British shows. I mean, it's like every single character is somebody you've seen in something else.
I think Outlander casting is kind of careful about that.
Mhm.
They try not to do that too much.
Jerry says that he was on a training mission that he was training to go fly over Poland and photograph Nazi concentration camps in that country. And that actually really did happen. So you can read about that on the internet. You just put it in there and ask about it, and you can read about it. They actually did do missions over Poland to try to make photographic evidence of what was being done there. And then the last thing I had is that in the show, Jerry's flying over Scotland, but in the book, he was flying over Northumberland. And so I looked that up because I knew it was somewhere associated with the British Isles, but I didn't know anything more about it. And it turns out it's a ceremonial country in the north of England. And my thinking about it is that if he flew through a ley line, which is what is implied, what caused him to go back in time? And why would he go back to that time? He did go back 202 years because he went down on October 31st, 1941. So he went back to 1739.
Maybe it was just that.
But why would he go back there? He wouldn't have been thinking about anybody there. So
but I mean, Claire went back to.
Yeah, and there's
without thinking of anybody.
Well, we don't know. Some people think she might have been thinking about Black Jack Randall because she just been
they were having that conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh, interesting. Have you guys noticed in some of the episodes you hear people say yeah. I can't remember specifically where we heard. I know I've heard Jamie say it, Ian say it. Anyway, I asked Agav O'Brien about that, who was the old Gaelic consultant. Now it's Gillibride Macmillan, but it means "oh God." It's just an exclamation that means "oh God." The writers Madeline Brestol and Evan McGahey come from in-house. Madeline was previously Matt's assistant, and Evan was also an assistant on the show previously. She doesn't have a lot of other writing credits or any. So yeah, they were kind of trained up in-house, and I think they did a really nice job.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting.
Is it their first episode that they've written of Outlander?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's their first one, as far as I know. And then Jan Mathis is a dude. I think last time I said it, I thought it was a woman. He's Belgian, and he also directed Diana's episode, the next one, 714. You didn't get used to it. And let's see, he's BAFTA nominated. He for his work on Shetland, and then he's also done Vikings and The Last Kingdom.
Oh,
And
wow. He's got
yeah,
a resume.
exactly. So I looked up his Instagram, and he has something interesting on there. He said, "Music is my stairway to heaven. Nature brings me back to earth." And I thought that was interesting because he used so much nature in this episode. I was like, okay, this guy's a nature lover. And I really appreciate that. I'm a nature lover too. And so let's see. So he really translates that into our viewing pleasure. Rolo, you know, the scene where we get a little foreshadowing where Ian says, "You're none nay so young as you used to be." So I looked up to see how old Rolo actually is, the actor. And he was cast, they were cast, because it's two dogs, two puppies from the same litter, in May of 2017. And so they're around 8 years old now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big dogs don't tend to live that long. So
I know. So I mean the actual actor, I saw somewhere Kat said that he bit her one time, so she wasn't gonna miss him. Let's see. I have a little bit of a update on something that's not from this episode, but so LandCon, the women who do LandCon in Paris, are doing their last one in Scotland next or this year in October. And so, you know, he's the guy who plays Master Raymond is a French actor. And one of the women who runs LandCon ran into him and posted that he remembered her and wasn't that great. And then she said, and he also told me that he's in season 8 and that he even sings a song in English at the end. And I was like, no. So I don't know if this means this faith storyline is going to keep going, or if they're maybe, you know, promoting a Master Raymond. I don't know, but I was kind of like, oh boy.
wonder if he's singing that by the beach thing that
Oh.
to her to teach it to her.
Oh no. At
And
the
that's where I'm going
end,
with it.
so it's gonna like be threaded through all of season 8. Matt, what are you doing? Go back and edit it out. Okay. So I don't know, but that's just a little bit of a spoiler. I also saw somebody had mentioned, think of what is the name of what Tom Christie has? Something contracture.
Dupuytren's contracture.
Thank you. Not Dupuytren. It's pretty close.
Dupuytren's, yeah.
Yeah. So someone posted, must have been on Facebook, that they discovered that the gene, that it's genetic, and
Yes.
that the gene for it is the same one that rides on the gene for blue eyes.
Well, that's not too surprising because it has a nickname called the Viking disease. That's an old nickname for it, is the Viking disease. And it does tend to be more common in men, but it also is more common in people from Northern Europe background.
Okay, well, there you go. I mean, that's what her doctor told her, that it's that I don't know how that works, but she said it's on the same gene as blue eyes, that if you're a carrier, that you have blue eyes and it's on that same gene. I don't know. Or you have a gene for blue
I'll look
eyes.
into it. Kathy, do you see it very much in African Americans? Does it happen?
I don't. In fact, I've never
seen it.
Every patient I've had was always a white male.
Blue-eyed, do you remember?
I don't remember the color of their eyes.
My dad had it. He had blue eyes.
Yeah. So.
I just thought that was interesting, and I wanted to
I
bring it
didn't
up.
know
And
that. Actually, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's worth looking into.
all right, let's go to favorite lines. Kath, did you have some favorite lines?
I did. Although I didn't write them out verbatim, but I thought my favorite was the one about when Jamie was telling Ian that he was given advice from Dougal, Rupert, and Angus, and when Ian asks, was any of it good? He goes, God, no. That was my favorite. I mean, I actually laughed in that one. When Claire leaned into Jamie during the wedding, and she said, um, when are we supposed to speak? And he basically was like, when spirit moves you. So those were my favorite because they made me laugh, and I just like that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't expecting to laugh in this episode, so I thought that was.
Yeah, I liked when Catherine is that when Claire says, what if the spirit doesn't move them? And he says, then we may be sitting here for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that made me laugh too. I liked when she said, when he says, well, should I stand up and take responsibility for dragging Ian into, influencing him, getting him into all this? And she said, if the spirit moves you to, but personally, I'd advise you and the spirit to stay out of it.
More humor.
Yeah.
I liked something that Rachel said to Ian when she said, thy life's journey lies along its own path, Ian, and I cannot share thy journey, but I will walk beside thee. I can walk beside thee, and I will. She is such a awesome character. I just thought, what a great thing to say to a companion, that you intend to spend your life, the rest of your life in. What kind of faith does that instill in the solidity and the validity of your relationship when one person tells the other one, I will walk beside you. I can't do your own path because it's your own, but I will walk beside you and be your companion. I just thought that was very, very powerful.
That's one of my favorite lines in the entire book series, because it's so it encapsulates, like, we are our own people. You're on your journey, I'm on my journey, we're not enmeshed, and I can't do your journey, but I can walk next to you, and I will. I mean, just boom, that is so profound. I think
I honestly believe that one of the difficulties in a marriage is when people do not have a clear identity of who they are, one or the other pair, because if one doesn't have it, then the other one will take over, and be more controlling, in my opinion. So I think this is there's just a lot of meat in that one short thing.
And again, it's Rachel. She's this Quaker, and she's basically like, I know who I am, and you're separate from me, but I'm going to walk next to you, because it's confusing, I think it can be. I liked when Bree said, oh, you haven't seen Hysterical. When those jerky police officers were trying to be like, you're having an affair with this guy. And then I liked it when Jerry said, if you've got alcohol, I'd rather drink it.
Yeah, there was a lot of humor in this.
Yeah.
Well, I liked at the wedding when Denzel said, but now I see thee with Ian, Rachel. I realize my fears were for naught, for only the spirit can lead the way to such a path. With Ian by thy side, thee has found love, and therefore a home. I really like that.
When Claire says, bloody men, you and Denzel both, when will you realize you're not dragging us anywhere? And then Jamie says, you think we don't have a right to worry about you? And she doesn't really answer. Oh, she says, like, you in a cot, or without you in a bed, I will always pick you. That line was kind of, I don't know, there wasn't. I thought Claire was a little flippant in that scene.
I liked Claire's comment, a marriage, she's talking to Rachel, and she said, Mercy was there, the three of them, when they're dressing her, and she said, a marriage is not made in ritual or in words, but in the living of it. And that's out of Moby. It's chapter 94. That's right out of the book. I really like that line.
Yeah. I liked when Denzel came in and said, is he putting the chairs in place or taking them away? I thought that was a clever device by the writers again, to be like, I'm there's urgency, I'm late, you know.
Akin to that same conversation between Ian and Jamie pre-wedding night. So Jamie said that when he married Claire, that she said to him, go slowly and pay attention. And so Ian said, was she gentle with ye? And Jamie said, God, no. It's another one of that same comment that he made about the other issue. And so I thought that was funny. It made me laugh out loud, like we've been saying.
I thought it was funny when Rachel says the morning after, was last night not enough for thee? And I thought, man, she doesn't know young men. Like, he goes, never. And I'm like, well, yeah, get ready, Rachel.
Enjoy it while it lasts.
What did you say? What did you say?
I said enjoy it while it lasts. I guess that is another medical thing.
Yeah, there you go.
Testosterone, which is why.
Yep.
Yes, Ian's a healthy young man.
Yeah. The only other one that I thought was, it wasn't in the book, but I thought it was well done, was Claire said to Jamie, thank you for missing that ship.
Yeah.
That said a lot in that, just those few words too. So I like that line.
Yeah. And then she said also, at least this time it's the right color with his uniform.
Yeah.
And then I liked actually when Buck said, I wouldn't have put much stock in memory, not for one such as us. I thought Buck was kind of a Yoda in this, much more of a Yoda than the Buck in the
He's
books.
pretty wise in this,
Yeah.
in this half of the season 7.
And I don't really was Buck like that? I don't remember so much. Yeah.
Not that I remember.
Yeah. Okay, let's do standouts.
Standouts. Why did I have shout outs?
Do shout outs too.
I felt standout with casting. When there was one point where you had Jerry, Roger, and Buck in the same screen, I guess, and the resemblance between the three of them was pretty remarkable. I've noticed all along that because they show Roger and Buck next to each other a lot, and they have the same face, same shape, coloring, and all the rest. But when they added Jerry in, and then it was the same. He didn't look much like exactly, but it was very clear looking at his face. You could see how he would produce Roger.
Yeah.
I mean, I just thought they did a really good job with casting. I've always felt they've done a pretty good job with casting.
For the most part, I agree.
When it comes to resemblance. But that was what I really noticed.
Carmen, you said for the most part, when did it not work?
No, let's don't go there.
I'm gonna say the director and within the cinematography. Just I think that it added a lot to this episode.
Well, I'm going to give a shout out to Matthew Adair, who is the little boy that plays Jimmy.
Oh,
I think he's really charming for one thing. And for another thing, he really he says his lines very convincingly. And,
yeah.
he's a decent actor for such a little kid. And so I take my hat off to him. He's doing a good job.
I think he did an especially good job in this episode.
Yeah.
I mean, he
They
had a
do a
lot to do here.
Well, yeah, he had more to do than we've ever seen him have before. But yeah, he did a good job.
Do you guys follow Dermot Murtaugh, who plays Buck? He's pretty cute.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's
yeah.
a nice looking guy.
Oh.
I like his physique. I like his
Yeah.
I like
He's a
his
big guy and
hobbies.
he's got dimples and
Mhm.
he's pretty
Yeah.
cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, when he's
I think
not
he's
so hairy.
charismatic too.
Yeah.
I find
Yeah.
him charismatic, and I think that's one of the charming things for me about him.
I think he's a good actor and he's commanding.
Hmm.
In the past, editing has really taken away from my enjoyment of some of the episodes. And so when this one, and especially when it's the jumping back and forth between modern and his, and earlier,
Mhm.
but this time they did it, and it didn't take away from the story at all. In fact, it kind of made me enjoy it a little more.
Because there was a lot of back and forth, not only between scenes, but between centuries, which adds
Yeah.
yet another significant layer to things. And I didn't feel like it jarred me in the way that a couple of the episodes have. Maybe jarred is a little bit too strong of a word, but it just seemed, I agree, it just seemed to flow.
Wasn't
Well,
choppy.
no, it wasn't.
I think they let the scenes breathe, and then they also had very effective transitions that they spent a little moment. So it gave you a chance to be like, okay, we're going
We're back here now.
somewhere else. Yeah. I'm gonna call out Joey Phillips for this episode, who plays Denzel. He had more to do in this, and he's really good. He's
He
really
is.
convincing, and he tears up a lot. He's very
Earnest.
heartfelt and earnest, which is a Denzel trait.
Yes.
So yeah, thought he did a great job.
Well, I always come back to Rachel.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't write down her name.
Izzy.
Izzy. She just, I don't know, that woman is so expressive. Her face, to me, is just so expressive, and her eyebrows are like a character of their own. I could just watch her all, the whole episode. She's just so, everything that she says, she emotes, she puts meaning in it. That's
Yeah.
not very easy to do. And it is varied. It's not always the same. Sometimes you see an actor and they repeat the same kind of expressions. She doesn't tend to do that, and I find that a really remarkable trait, and an example of who I consider to be a gifted actress or actor, as I think the term is now.
Yeah,
Preferred.
she really embodies and is a body actor too. That she acts with her face.
Mhm.
She also changes her
Her perspective.
a lot. A lot of people just like stay in one place and read lines. She
Yeah.
changes her eye
Mm-hmm.
contact and her
Chin position.
yeah, her chin, and her breath. She just uses a lot. She's like a full body actress who's very organic, and seems to be very inhabiting her character in the moment, whatever's happening. She's just so believable. I agree with you. I thought John Bell did a great job in this episode too.
Yes.
His little face, it's funny because in the episode where we saw him kill the Hessian, he just so warrior, and in this one he was that young boy again, just looking at Jamie, and then he was so nervous, and then Rachel comes in and he's like, oh, there she is, and I don't know, and then they show his face while Denzel and Rachel are talking, and he's, and then he's like, are you talking about me? And it I don't know, he just he's very mutable and good in that way. But he did a good job in this one. I'll just give a quick shout out to Henry, who I thought did a good job. He
With
conveyed,
his few lines.
yeah, being a charming gray. He came
Yeah.
across as a charming gray
He did.
in that short amount of time. And then also the little boy that Roger and
He was good.
Buck find. I thought he did a good job of being a 1739, and being like, why would I? He grounded the scene. And part of it was the writing for him, but he also felt like a kid from the past.
Mhm.
He did a good job there.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to big themes. Kath?
I felt the big theme was serendipity.
Was what?
Serendipity. It just seemed like, as opposed to coincidence, it just seemed that everything happened the way it was supposed to. The connections were made the way that they were supposed to. You would never consider, like, if you were to meet Rachel and you were to meet Ian, you would never put the two of them together. But it was serendipitous that they fell in love. With Roger finding his father, with there was another. I guess you could even consider it serendipitous, even though it's from a prior episode, of Jamie not being on the ship that was lost at sea. George
Mercy
John Gray,
and Henry.
yeah, or even Lord John Gray being found by, I guess somewhat reasonable Continental Army people.
And clean, very clean.
Yeah, very clean ones. It just seemed like there was a lot that happened in the way that it seemed like it was supposed to.
Yeah, that's a good one. So my big theme is marriage. I thought that was a big theme in this episode, that it kind of, we dug into it a little bit. And Carmen, you mentioned the lines, a marriage is made not in ritual nor in words, but in the living of it every day, whether you're together or apart. There's a lot of wisdom in that. It's each couple, each marriage is unique. You start out with the same vows, but it's really unique to the two people who are in it. What?
No, you said you started out with the same vows. I said, or not, because we got married in a funeral home. So
What? What?
have a wedding.
What? How did that happen?
So we were driving to the store to get bread, and we saw that the courthouse parking lot was empty. So we're like, oh, let's go get the license now because we won't have to wait in line. So we went in and got the license, but then found out that the judge was illegally charging people to marry them, which they're not supposed to do. So
where was this?
This was in South Carolina, in Anthony's hometown. So he later got arrested for it. But anyway, we were broke medical students, so we're like, oh man, we don't want to pay anybody. So we looked it up and we found out you just had to have somebody notarize it. And his cousin who owns a funeral home is a notary. We're like, hey, can you notarize our marital?
There's serendipity for you right there.
Hold on. So did you have a white dress? Were you
No, he just
standing?
went to the funeral home and sat there, showed him my ID, and he just stamped it. He was like, I know who you are. And he stamped the thing and he signed it, and that was it. We took it
Did you
back to
guys
the
say any
courthouse and we were
words?
married. Pardon?
Did you say any like mushy words or anything? So it's
How many
basically
years ago? How many years
And it
ago?
was interesting is that it was on his mother's birthday and 5 days before my birthday. Which so it was just a coincidence, but anyway, so yeah. So our anniversary and my mother-in-law's birthday are the same day.
That probably doesn't go over well.
No, I mean she doesn't care.
She
Well,
doesn't. Okay.
the only reason she got upset was because we didn't tell her first.
Wow. So, and how long have you been married?
33 years.
Well, I take that back. It's not the same vows. But yeah, I mean, like even the weddings are made up by each person, obviously. That's hilarious. And then we already talked about what Rachel says about walking alongside. It just felt to me like marriage was a big theme in this episode. And even, life goes on and you go through things in your marriage. And, look at Jamie and Claire, they've been through Frank and Leary and Lord John Gray and, and Ian and Rachel go through their things, and Roger and Bree are going through their things. And yeah, I feel bad. Mercy and Henry really,
It was like they can't go through their thing.
yeah, they can't get married, but I think I don't know if they'll be together or not. But anyway, that was my big theme, was marriage and just how unique each marriage is. And it really is, you make it up as you go along.
I had that down too. I have two big themes that I got out of this, but marriage was one of them. And on February 1st was my 62nd wedding anniversary. That's over 6 decades.
That's amazing.
And
have you liked them the entire time?
no.
Yeah. Thank you for being honest.
No, there have been times when I when I was furious at him.
Yeah.
But if you hang on to this business, and I think Diana is trying really hard in her books to show people how you make a marriage work, because Jamie and Claire don't have an even ground. They get angry with each other. They get upset with each other. They have lots of challenges in their life that they focus on. If you stick with it, it evens out. I can tell you that we've had times during our marriage that it really got rough, but we always stuck it out and then we got past it. And we have 4 beautiful children and 5 grandchildren and a great grandchild now. And I'm glad. I don't regret for a minute that I married him. I told him that on our anniversary. I said, I made the right decision. I'm glad I stuck with it. So marriage.
But I mean, so you were saying not only that I married you, but that during I think I don't know, I'll say that my relationship has come to places where I've considered, like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. I don't know about you guys, but and then you
sure, once in a while
renegotiate the contract.
Yeah. I think that's what Claire means when she said it's not the words and it's not the ritual itself, but it's the living of it. And that's one of the things I said last time that bothers me about these big fanfare weddings that are so popular now. It's all show. Show me that you're going to stay together, that you're going to make it with each other, that you're going to be able to handle life's challenges that are going to be thrown at you, because it will come. And that's the main thing I got out of this. But the other one, which is more subtle, is that the love of a child for its parent is just almost inexplicable. Even if you never knew this person. And I think what Roger was expressing to his dad was real. You know, I love you. I put myself in his shoes when I watched that and afterwards and thought, how would I feel if that, I would tell my parent, I love you. You're my parent. They may not feel the same. You know, I don't know about that side of it, but I do know about the side of how the child feels about their parent. And it takes a lot to destroy that. It's possible to do it, but that bond is just quite amazing, in my opinion. So that's sort of a subcategory, I guess, under marriage, because it kind of is related to it for me.
Yeah, I was just thinking about if there are other instances in this episode of that. I mean, we saw Jemmy and
Yeah, I was gonna say Jemmy and
Bree.
Bree, but I can't.
I mean, Jamie talked about William.
Yes, and then if you think about it, Jamie is his surrogate father, and their talk that they had with each other was, you know, more like a father and son to me than it was like an uncle and a nephew. And, you know, Jamie standing up and saying, I held you in my arms, you know, when you were a little child. I mean, that's a bond that is just a reflection of the parent-child bond, in my opinion.
Definitely. The way Ian looks at him, was looking at him when he stood up and said all that, was just like, you are the most important person to me in this world besides this person next to me. I mean, just his face.
Yeah.
All right. Kathy.
Right.
Well, we're finishing before our 3-hour mark usually, so that's good.
Yeah.
I'm yawning though.
Yeah.
She's up late.
I know. Awesome. All right. Love you guys. Miss
Great
Antoinette.
discussion.
Yeah, it was great.
You all take care.
You too.
Stay
I'll
strong.
see you all. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.